All right, so if you clicked on this video, you are either pre-teaching yourself on the information that we're going to go over in class, or you need just a little bit of help. And it's going to be in your interactive journal, so you can refer to this video anytime if you want a little bit more information on how to solve linear equations given graph, equation, uh, or a table. So here, linear functions, as we remember from last year in the 7th grade, linear functions are in y equals mx plus b form. That's the formula. And there are two really important letters in there that mean something. They all turn into numbers, but there's two that are always going to stay constant, and that's our slope and y-intercept. So if we look at this, our linear equations, we see two different colors. We have an m and we have a b. Now, if you remember from last year, m is the slope, right? And b is y-intercept. And through these little notes, this little refresh, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth. But just know the slope is the actual line that we see. So if we look at this right here, our slope is the blue line. So here's my blue line right here that I'm going over in blue. I know it'll be a little bit hard to see, but this is the actual slope. So the slope is the steepness and the direction a line is going. So you can go very steep, you could go left or right, like being positive or negative. So the steepness or how flat something is, that is just the slope. It is just the difference between vertical change over horizontal change. And the y-intercept, the b, is where the line crosses the y-axis. And it's very easy to see visually. It's also very easy to see in the equation. It's the additive. It's whatever's being added or subtracted at the end, or the one that doesn't have the variable attached to it, right? Because you could still have y equals b plus mx in this form, and whatever's being added or subtracted is the y-intercept. So if we're looking at this specific line, we can see that this line or this slope crosses the y-axis at that number right there, because that's the point right there. So here, this slope, the y-intercept is 1. And the proper way to do it is in its ordered pair would be 0, 1. So if it crosses the y-axis, the x is going to be 0, because you could see, here's my x right here. So my x is 0, my y point is 1. So my y-intercept is 1, but in the ordered pair, it's 0, 1. So let's get a little bit more precise with the few types of slopes that we're going to see in algebra. So again, slope is a measure of vertical change, Actually, I'm just going to write vertical versus horizontal change, so I don't have to write change twice. Horizontal change. So that's telling you how much it goes up or down versus how much it goes left or right. So there's 4 types of slope that we're going to see in algebra. Uh, just like reading a text message or an Instagram caption or a book, we read left to right. So if I'm looking at this sentence right here, I read this left to right. Slope is the measure of vertical versus horizontal change. I don't read change horizontal versus vertical of measure is slope. It's too hard. It doesn't make sense. So we read slope just like that, left to right. So here's the left part, and I read it going to the right. Well, if I read it going to the right, this clearly goes up, right? So think of this little biker person. This person is going to be going uphill, and we want to associate going uphill as a positive slope. Well, the opposite is the same thing. Reading left to right, I'm reading this left to right. This biker chick is going downhill, left to right, downhill. We want to associate a downhill with a negative slope. Now, this particular one, even if we read this left to right, which we should, reading right to left, the same thing's going to happen. It's perfectly flat. That is just a 0 slope, right? It's no uphill, it's no downhill, right? This is how you would kind of want to walk to school, right? You don't want to walk uphill because then you're going to have to like walk downhill, or I'm sorry, the other way around. If you walk downhill, you know it's going to come back uphill is going to happen. So I would say zero slope is just like a perfectly level floor, right? No slope, no vertical change for the horizontal change. And then last one is an oops, right? It's undefined. So if you put in 1 divided by 0 in the calculator, just like this slope, your calculator will say undefined. And I'm just going to write undef because we don't need to know too much. It's undefined, right? So you can even ask Siri to say what is 1 divided by 0 or 10 divided by 0, and she's going to give you an answer that doesn't make sense, right? So you can pause the video and do that now. You can't divide anything by 0, so that's why it's undefined. And I'll show you here probably later in the actual lesson as to why it's undefined and why we get this 0 slope right there, or the 0 denominator, because if there's a 0 in the denominator, it's not going to work out. And the y-intercepts, we're going to briefly go over this. Y-intercept is the B, so the B right there, where the line crosses the y-axis. So we know the y-axis is this vertical one right here. And wherever the line crosses, so here's my line right here, it crosses this y-axis, this red line. Well, where does it cross? Right there at 1. So my B is 1 or 0, comma 1. So I'm actually going to skip this one for right now. We're actually going to learn how to solve slope real quick with this, and then we're going to get back to this. So I'm going to show you on this other page how to do rise over run. Rise is going up, like rising out of bed, and running is going to go to the right. So 2 points, also going to show you on this previous slide. But here for number 3, we know how this is. M is slope, right? And B is y-intercept. So let's solve this by this graph. We have this graph, y equals 2x plus 3. It is in y equals mx plus b form. So we make sure step 1 is correct. Y equals mx plus b. It is. Find the m and b. Well, that's easy. M is 2 and the b is 3. And lastly, we're going to plot the y-intercepts and then more points. We're going to plot some points. So we're going to apply to the slope, so the change in y versus the change in x, or rise over run here. Rise over run. And again, we'll talk about this in a second. And we're going to draw the line. Well, my y-intercept is 3, positive 3. So I'm going to put a point right there at positive 3. Next, I'm going to apply the slope to the y-intercept. Well, how am I going to do that? My slope is 2. Well, what does that mean? Remember, a slope is a ratio. It's a ratio. It's rise over run. Rise over run. Now, that is also vertical versus horizontal. So we need a ratio. And 2 really isn't a ratio. Doesn't look like it. But we know with whole numbers, we can just go ahead and put it over 1. And now I have a ratio. So it rises 2. It rises 2. Rises 2. And it runs 1. Well, if it rises 2, that means I'm going to go up. I'm doing it in this pinkish color. I'm going to rise 2. So now I'm here and I'm going to run 1. Go to the right one. This is my new dot right here. So I have 2 dots. Well, the same thing goes. I can go down 2 and I could go to the left 1 to continue this. It's a positive slope, so it should look positive. So I'm going to go down 2, over 1. Down 2, over 1. And I have enough points to clearly see my line, so I'm just going to go ahead and draw that. Right? So if I was given this line, I could still figure out slope, because I could grab this point right here and the next point is right here. Well, to get to this point, I have to go up to, let me do a different color so you'll be able to see it through that line. Let's do this. So I went up 2, positive 2. And then I went to the right 1, positive 1. So I rose 2 and I ran 1. So obviously this is my slope as being 2. And then I could check my y-intercept right there. So it would look like y equals 2 over 1x plus 3. But I can just make it a little bit cleaner. Y equals 2x plus 3. So that is the rise over run way to solve. So counting how many you go up and then over. Well, if it's a negative slope, you're actually going to be still going to the right, but you're going to go down and then to the right. You're going to go down and then to the right to continue the slope. So you may not be going up, you could be going down as well. But you're always going to go to the right. Just make it a little bit easier for yourself. Always go to the right. And then 2 points. Well, let's look at that. Well, this one is going to use a little bit more math. Simple subtraction. Maybe a little bit of division if it's not fully simplified. So let's use the same line. And I'm going to grab 2 points. Let's grab my y-intercepts. Let me do it in this pink color, the y-intercept and this point right here, the 2 different points. Well, this I need points for. Well, my y-intercept is 0, 3, and then this point right here is 1, 5. To find it mathematically using the subtraction, we use this y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Well, it's actually very simple to do this. I'm going to say this one is 2 and this one is 1. It doesn't matter which one's which. I could say, I'm going to put it in blue. I could have said this one is 2 and this one is 1, and I would still get the same answer. It doesn't matter which one you do as long as they're the same. So I'm going to highlight my y's. There's my y's, and then I'm going to highlight my x's right there. Well, y2, sorry, let me get this purple going on. y2 is this one right here because it's the y and it's in my second point. So it's going to be 5 minus y1. So here's my 1, right? And here's my y. 5 minus 3. And then same thing for my x's. This is my 2, right? And this is my 1, as you can see here. x2 minus x1. So here, 5 minus 3 is 2. 1 minus 0 is 1. There's my slope. And I figured that out. 2 over 1 or 2 is my slope. Finding y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And again, given this, I could still figure out my formula by doing y equals 2x because, again, I know my slope right there. And then my y-intercept is that one right there where the line crosses the y-axis, and it does that at positive 3. So those are a few ways that you can figure out slope. We are going to do more practice, and I probably will link another video if you need a little bit more help. But we still will be going through this in class. This is just a refresher if you need it for notes in the future to look back on, or if you kind of want to learn a little bit quicker and do your independent practice by yourself given the class time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you later.